The early morning sun had barely peeked through the windows of the FBI field office when Marcus Johnson walked through the security checkpoint at 6:30 a.m. At 34 years old, he carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned agent, greeting the security personnel with his usual warm smile. Marcus headed straight to the briefing room, his polished dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. Today wasn't going to be a suit and tie kind of day. Instead, he carried a duffel bag containing casual clothes that would help him blend in with the crowds at Central Station. "Morning," Johnson called out his supervisor, Special Agent Sarah Thompson, as she entered the room with a stack of files. "Ready for today's operation?" Marcus nodded, pulling out his notebook. The briefing room slowly filled with other agents, but Marcus remained focused on reviewing his notes from the past week. The FBI had received credible intelligence about potential threats to major transportation hubs, and Central Station was at the top of their list. "All right, people, let's get started," Thompson announced, pulling up a map of Central Station on the large screen. "We have reason to believe someone might be doing reconnaissance for a possible attack. Johnson, you'll be our eyes on the ground today." Marcus listened intently as Thompson outlined his role. He would need to monitor suspicious activities, particularly around the main concourse and baggage areas. His background in behavioral analysis made him perfect for this assignment. "Remember," Thompson continued, "we're looking for anyone taking photos of security cameras, timing security patrol routes, or showing unusual interest in structural points." After the briefing, Marcus changed into his civilian clothes, a plain blue t-shirt, black jeans, and comfortable walking shoes. He packed his specialized equipment into a regular-looking black backpack, a high-resolution mini-camera, communication devices, and his FBI credentials carefully hidden in a secret compartment. In the locker room, his partner of 3 years, Agent Mike Chen, approached him. "Hey Marcus, that everything you need?" "Yeah, all set," Marcus replied, checking his watch. "Standard 8-hour surveillance shift. Should be straightforward." Mike handed him an earpiece, so small it was practically invisible. "Command center will be monitoring your feed. Thompson wants constant communication." Marcus inserted the earpiece and tested it. "Check, check. Command, do you copy?" "Loud and clear, Johnson," came Thompson's voice through the tiny speaker. Before leaving, Marcus stood in front of the mirror, assessing his appearance. He saw what others would see: a tall, well-built black man in casual clothes with a backpack. He had done this dozens of times before, but something felt different today. Maybe it was the heightened alert level, or maybe it was just his instincts trying to tell him something. "Hey," Mike called out, noticing his friend's hesitation. "You good?" Marcus shook off the feeling. "Yeah, just doing my mental checklist. You know how it is." As he drove to Central Station, Marcus rehearsed his cover story in his head. If anyone asked, he was waiting for his sister's train, which had been delayed. It was simple, relatable, and gave him a reason to move around the station. Parking his car in the long-term lot, Marcus took a deep breath and checked his phone. 8:45 a.m. The morning rush would be dying down soon, making it easier to spot unusual behavior. He adjusted his backpack and walked toward the station's main entrance. The station was a massive structure of steel and glass, filled with the usual mix of commuters, tourists, and city workers. Marcus moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his trained eyes already scanning for anything out of place. "Command, I'm entering the main concourse now," he spoke softly into his hidden microphone. "Copy that, Johnson. Remember, we got eyes on you through the station's security feeds." Marcus found a spot near the information desk, pretending to check the arrival boards while observing the flow of people. Little did he know that in just a few hours, this routine surveillance operation would turn into one of the most challenging days of his career. His watch showed 9:00 a.m. The operation had officially begun, and Marcus Johnson, one of the FBI's most experienced surveillance specialists, was ready for another day of protecting his city. However, fate had other plans, and the events that would unfold would not only test his training, but also shine a spotlight on some of law enforcement's most pressing issues. The station's massive clock showed 10:30 a.m. as Marcus Johnson continued his careful surveillance. He had already completed 3 systematic walks through the terminal, following the patterns outlined in his morning briefing. His black backpack, containing sensitive FBI monitoring equipment, hung comfortably on his shoulders. Command, entering the east wing now, Marcus whispered into his hidden microphone. He stopped near a coffee shop, pretending to check his phone while observing two men studying the emergency exit signs with unusual interest. Copy that, Johnson. Agent Thompson's voice crackled in his ear. Any developments? Nothing significant yet, he replied quietly, though there's some suspicious activity near exit B3. Two males, both wearing green jackets, paying close attention to security features. Marcus bought a coffee to maintain his cover, choosing a table that gave him a clear view of the suspicious men. As he sat, he noticed an elderly woman at the next table giving him concerned glances. She clutched her purse tighter and moved her chair slightly away. Marcus had experienced such reactions before. It came with being a black man in America, even though he was the one protecting everyone. The suspicious men eventually left, and Marcus logged their descriptions in his phone, disguising it as casual texting. As he moved to his next observation point, he caught fragments of whispered conversations. That man has been here for hours. He keeps walking around with that backpack. Should we tell security? Marcus remained professional, though he couldn't help but feel a twist of irony in his stomach. He was there to protect these very people who now viewed him with suspicion. Command, moving to the main concourse, he reported. I'm getting some attention from civilians. Nothing unusual for this type of operation. Understood, Johnson. Maintain your cover. Station security has been notified of your presence. Or so they thought. Around noon, Marcus positioned himself near the ticket counters. He noticed a young woman in a red dress photographing the area with her phone. Following protocol, he observed her carefully, only to conclude she was just a tourist taking vacation photos. The lunch rush brought a new wave of travelers, filling the station with hurried footsteps and rolling suitcases. Marcus used this time to change his observation point again, this time settling near the north entrance. A security guard passed by, giving Marcus a long, hard look. Marcus nodded politely, maintaining his calm demeanor while noting that this particular guard wasn't present during his morning briefing. Something had been missed in the communication chain. Command, be advised, he whispered. Local security seems unaware of our operation. I'm getting increased attention. Before Command could respond, Marcus noticed a group of 3 men who fit several suspicious behavior patterns. They were splitting up, each taking different positions around the main hall, appearing to time the security patrols. Possible situation developing, Marcus reported, standing up to get a better view. 3 subjects showing coordinated movement patterns. Request permission to move closer. Permission granted. Maintain distance. Do not engage. As Marcus changed position to better observe the suspects, he noticed more security guards entering the area. They were trying to be discreet, but their repeated glances in his direction told him something was wrong. A mother hurriedly pulled her children away as he passed, and a businessman in a suit quickly stepped into a shop when Marcus walked by. The ripple effect of fear was spreading, created by nothing more than his presence and the paranoia of others. Command, we may have a situation here, Marcus whispered, now genuinely concerned about the escalating tension. I'm getting a lot of attention from both civilians and security. Might need to abort if this continues. Stay in position, Johnson. We need eyes on those 3 suspects. Local law enforcement has been notified of your presence. But as Marcus would soon discover, something had gone terribly wrong with that notification. The next few minutes would transform this routine surveillance operation into a national incident, one that would force America to confront uncomfortable truths about law enforcement, racial profiling, and the dangerous consequences of poor communication between agencies. The clock struck 1:00 p.m., and Marcus Johnson, still focused on his suspects, remained unaware that he had become the primary target of a rapidly mobilizing SWAT team. The station's atmosphere shifted noticeably as the clock approached 1:30 p.m. Marcus Johnson maintained his surveillance position, still tracking the 3 suspicious men, unaware that he had become the subject of multiple concern calls to local law enforcement. In the station's security office, the situation was reaching a boiling point. Security Supervisor Tom Wilson was reviewing the day's reports when his desk phone rang for the 5th time in 20 minutes. Central Station Security, Wilson answered, his voice tense. Sir, this is Karen Matthews from Platform 6, the caller reported. That man with the black backpack is back again. He's been circling the station for hours, watching everyone. Several passengers are frightened. Wilson rubbed his temples. Description: tall black male, blue t-shirt, black backpack. He keeps talking to himself and writing things in his phone. What Wilson didn't know was that the FBI's notification of their operation had been misrouted due to a technical error in the communication system. The crucial email sat unread in a rarely checked general inbox, while urgent decisions were being made based on incomplete information. Meanwhile, at the local police department's Tactical Operations Center, SWAT Commander David Roberts was reviewing surveillance footage from the station's cameras. The images showed Marcus moving through the station, his pattern of movement raising every red flag in their counter-terrorism handbook. "How long has this been going on?" Roberts demanded. "First report came in around 10 a.m., sir," his assistant responded. "We've got over 20 separate civilian complaints, and the subject's behavior matches multiple threat indicators." Roberts made a decision. "Call in the team. Full tactical response. If this is what we think it is, we can't take any chances." Back at the station, Marcus was still focused on his actual suspects. "Command, subjects are splitting up again. The one in the gray jacket is heading toward the restricted area." "Stay on him, Johnson." Thompson's voice crackled in his ear. "We might have something here." Marcus moved carefully through the crowd, maintaining visual contact with his target. He noticed more security guards appearing at various points around the station, but assumed they were responding to the same suspicious activity he was tracking. Unknown to Marcus, SWAT teams were already taking up positions around the station. Commander Roberts had ordered a full tactical response, with teams covering all exits. In their command vehicle, they reviewed Marcus's movement pattern over the past hours, interpreting his careful surveillance as potential terrorist reconnaissance. "All units in position," crackled the radio. "Subject is still inside, maintaining previous behavior pattern." Roberts grabbed his radio. "Remember, this is a crowded civilian area. We need this clean and quick. Wait for my signal." Inside the station, Marcus noticed something was wrong. The crowd's behavior had changed dramatically. People were being quietly directed away from his area by security personnel. His years of training sent alarm bells ringing in his mind. "Command, something's not right," he whispered urgently. "The station's being quietly evacuated around me. Request immediate backup." Before Agent Thompson could respond, Marcus caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold: the reflection of tactical gear in a window. He spotted multiple armed figures moving into position. "Command, we have a serious situation," he whispered, fighting to keep his voice calm. "I've got what appears to be tactical units converging on my position. Please tell me these are our people." The silence on the other end of his communication device was deafening. Something had gone terribly wrong with the operations coordination. Marcus knew he had seconds to make a decision. His FBI training taught him to avoid sudden movements that might escalate the situation, but he also needed to prevent what could become a catastrophic mistake. Moving very slowly, he reached for his hidden FBI credentials. But before he could access them, a booming voice filled the station. "This is SWAT. Male with the black backpack. Get on the ground now. Hands where we can see them." The next few moments would become a turning point in law enforcement history, as an FBI agent's routine surveillance operation collided with a SWAT team's worst fears, all under the watching eyes of hundreds of smartphone cameras. The clock showed 2:15 p.m., and Central Station was about to become the center of a national conversation about race, law enforcement, and the dangerous cost of assumptions. Time seemed to freeze in Central Station at 2:15 p.m. as the SWAT team's commands echoed through the building. Marcus Johnson stood perfectly still, his mind racing through his FBI training for hostile situations. Around him, the remaining civilians scrambled for cover, many with phones raised to record what was unfolding. "Get on the ground. This is your final WRNG." The SWAT commander's voice boomed through a megaphone. Marcus could see multiple laser sights dancing across his chest. His earpiece crackled with Agent Thompson's urgent voice. "Johnson, we're working to coordinate with local law enforcement. Stay calm. Do exactly as they say." "I'm getting down," Marcus announced loudly and clearly, following his training for high-risk situations. "I am slowly kneeling. Please do not shoot. I am a federal agent. Keep your hands where we can see them. Do not reach for anything." The SWAT team, led by Commander Roberts, moved in with precision. Their black tactical gear and raised weapons created a sharp contrast against the station's bright interior. Dozens of smartphones captured every moment, their owners knowing they were witnessing something significant. Marcus kept his hands raised as he carefully knelt on the cold floor. His years of training helped him maintain composure, even as his heart raced. He could hear the heavy boots of the SWAT team approaching from multiple directions. "My credentials are in my back pocket," Marcus said calmly but loudly. "I am an FBI agent conducting authorized surveillance. I am armed as part of my duties." "Silence, C," commanded one of the SWAT officers. "Any movement will be considered a threat." Two SWAT team members approached Marcus from behind, their weapons trained on him. One roughly grabbed his arms, pulling them behind his back while the other quickly applied handcuffs. The cold metal clicked against his wrists as Marcus winced from the tight grip. The backpack could be explosive. Someone shouted, "Get the bomb squad in here." More officers surrounded Marcus, creating a protective circle around him. The bomb squad, already on standby, rushed forward in their protective gear. Marcus could only watch as they carefully removed his backpack, treating it like it contained a deadly weapon instead of standard FBI surveillance equipment. "Listen to me," Marcus tried again, his voice steady despite the situation. "Contact FBI Special Agent Sarah Thompson. She can verify my identity. This is a serious misunderstanding." Commander Roberts approached, his weapon still raised. "You've been observed conducting suspicious surveillance of this station for hours. Multiple civilians reported threatening behavior." A young woman in the crowd shouted, "I saw him. He's been here all day, watching everyone." Her voice shook with a mixture of fear and excitement as she recorded everything on her phone. "Because that's my job," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm an undercover FBI agent tracking actual suspects, who are probably getting away right now." The tension in the air was electric. More police officers arrived, filling the station with flashing lights. News vans were already pulling up outside, alerted by the numerous social media posts flooding the internet. "Check his back pocket," Marcus said again. "My FBI credentials are there. You're interfering with the federal investigation." A SWAT officer cautiously reached for Marcus's back pocket, pulling out his wallet. The moment he opened it and saw the FBI badge, his entire demeanor changed. "Sir," the officer called to Commander Roberts, his voice suddenly uncertain. "You need to see this." Roberts approached and examined the credentials. His face paled as he realized the magnitude of their mistake. The FBI badge and ID card were authentic. "Get someone from the FBI on the phone now," Roberts ordered. "And somebody get these cuffs off him." But the damage was already done. Hundreds of phones had captured everything. Within minutes, social media exploded with videos titled "SWAT Team Arrests Black FBI Agent," "Racial Profiling Gone Wrong," and "FBI Agent Mistaken for Terrorist." As the handcuffs were removed, Marcus slowly stood up, his professional demeanor intact despite the humiliation he'd just endured. He could already hear the news helicopters circling above the station. "Sir, we apologize for the misunderstanding," Commander Roberts began, but Marcus cut him off. "Save it for the press conference," he said quietly, "because there will be one. Right now, I need my backpack and equipment back. I still have a job to do, and you've just compromised a major federal investigation." The clock showed 2:30 p.m., and in just 15 minutes, a routine surveillance operation had transformed into what would become a national wake-up call about law enforcement communication and racial profiling in America. By 3:00 p.m., Central Station had transformed into a circus of activity. FBI Special Agent Sarah Thompson burst through the main entrance, her badge prominently displayed, with a team of federal agents behind her. The look on her face made several SWAT officers step back instinctively. Marcus Johnson sat in a quiet office away from the chaos, ice pack pressed against his wrists where the handcuffs had left marks. His normally neat blue t-shirt was wrinkled from the takedown, but his composure remained intact. His backpack and equipment had been returned after a thorough and unnecessary inspection by the bomb squad. "Johnson," Thompson called out as she entered the office. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Marcus replied professionally, though the tension in his jaw suggested otherwise. But we lost our suspects in all this chaos. 3 hours of surveillance wasted. Commander Roberts stood uncomfortably in the corner, his tactical gear now feeling heavy with the weight of his mistake. The email confirming the FBI operation had finally been discovered, buried in the station's general inbox. "Let me get this straight," Thompson addressed Roberts, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "You had written confirmation of our operation. You had an FBI agent's ID. You had multiple opportunities to verify his identity. Instead, you chose to mount a full tactical response based on what? Concerned citizens reporting a black man with a backpack." Roberts shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we received multiple reports of suspicious behavior." "Suspicious behavior?" Thompson interrupted. "You mean doing his job? Conducting authorized surveillance. The same kind of surveillance your own undercover officers do every day." Outside the office, media crews had already gathered. The videos of Marcus's arrest had gone viral, with millions of views and shares. Social media was exploding with hashtags and commentary, making the incident a national trending topic within hours. A young officer entered the office, looking nervous. "Sir, the mayor is on the phone, and the FBI director wants a full briefing in an hour." Marcus checked his phone, now flooded with missed calls and messages. His family had seen the videos. His mother's texts simply read, "Please call me. Tell me you're okay." "We need to get ahead of this," Thompson said, pacing the room. "The press is already spinning their own narrative. We need a joint statement, and we need it now." A knock on the door interrupted them. A station security guard entered, looking embarrassed. "Agent Johnson, we found these." He handed over several surveillance photos of the actual suspects Marcus had been tracking. They left the station during the incident. Marcus examined the photos, his frustration visible. They were planning something. "Now they know we were watching, and they're in the wind." The gravity of the situation settled over the room. Not only had racial profiling led to the wrongful detention of a federal agent, but it had also compromised a serious investigation. "I want every scrap of intel we have on those suspects," Thompson ordered. "And Commander Roberts, your team will provide full cooperation in tracking them down." Roberts nodded quickly. "Of course. Anything you need." Marcus stood up, straightening his shirt. "We should focus on damage control first. This story's already out there. We need to shape the narrative before it shapes itself." A legal representative from the FBI had arrived, along with the police department's public relations team. They huddled in the corner, frantically drafting statements and planning press conferences. "Johnson," Thompson said softly, moving closer to her agent. "You don't have to be part of the press conference. We can handle this." Marcus shook his head. "No, I need to be there. People need to see me stand up there in my FBI jacket. They need to see that this isn't just another incident to be swept under the rug. This needs to mean something." Through the office window, they could see more news vans arriving. The story had grown beyond a simple case of mistaken identity. It had become a spotlight on the deeper issues plaguing law enforcement: racial profiling, poor interagency communication, and the dangerous consequences of unchecked assumptions. The clock showed 3:45 p.m., and in 15 minutes, Marcus Johnson would step in front of the cameras, not just as an FBI agent, but as a symbol of change that was long overdue in American law enforcement. "Let's do this," he said, reaching for his FBI jacket. "But first, I need to call my mother." The press conference room at the Central Police Department was packed by 5:00 p.m. Camera flashes lit up the room like lightning as Marcus Johnson stepped up to the podium, now wearing his official FBI jacket. His mother had watched him on live television, and her words still echoed in his mind. "Make this count, baby. Make it mean something." FBI Special Agent Sarah Thompson stood to his left, while Commander Roberts and the police chief occupied the right side of the stage. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Good evening," Marcus began, his voice steady and professional. "Today, at approximately 2:15 p.m., while conducting authorized FBI surveillance at Central Station, I was mistakenly detained by SWAT forces who believed I was a terrorist threat." The room erupted with questions, but Marcus raised his hand for silence. What happened today goes beyond a simple miscommunication between agencies. It speaks to deeper issues that we, as law enforcement professionals, must address. In the back of the room, Social media journalists were live streaming the entire conference. The hashtag FBI while black was already trending nationwide, accompanied by the viral videos of his arrest. The suspects I was tracking escaped during the incident, Marcus continued. These were individuals showing genuine suspicious behavior, not someone simply existing while black. This compromise of our investigation has potential national security implications. A reporter raised her hand. Agent Johnson, do you believe you were profiled because of your race? The room fell silent. Commander Roberts shifted uncomfortably, and Thompson tensed beside Marcus. What I believe, Marcus responded carefully, is that we have work to do. When citizens see a black man with a backpack and automatically assume terrorist instead of law enforcement officer, when proper protocols are ignored because of rushed judgments, when an FBI agent can't do his job without being treated like a criminal, we have work to do. His words hit hard. Several reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads. The police chief stepped forward, reading from a prepared statement about reviewing protocols and improving interagency communication. The damage was done. The real story was Marcus Johnson, the FBI agent who turned a humiliating incident into a powerful message. After the press conference, Marcus sat in Thompson's office, watching the news coverage spread. His phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from fellow agents across the country, many sharing similar experiences. The director wants to see you tomorrow, Thompson said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. This incident is becoming a catalyst for change, Johnson. It shouldn't take something like this, Marcus replied, watching a news channel replay the video of his arrest. We shouldn't need a federal agent being mistaken for a terrorist to talk about these issues. Meanwhile, at the police department, Commander Roberts faced his own internal investigation. The misrouted email about the FBI operation was just the tip of the iceberg. Questions were being raised about the quick escalation to SWAT involvement, the lack of verification procedures, and the underlying assumptions that led to the incident. Social media continued to explode with commentary. Civil rights organizations called for policy changes. Law enforcement agencies across the country began reviewing their own protocols for interagency communication and suspect identification. Marcus's phone rang again. This time it was his younger brother, a rookie police officer in another state. Big bro, my entire department watched your press conference. You're changing things from the inside. By 8:00 p.m., the story had made international news. Messages poured in from law enforcement officers worldwide, sharing similar experiences and calling for change. What started as a mistaken arrest was becoming a movement. In her office, Thompson looked at the photos of the suspects who escaped. We'll find them, Johnson. But maybe today's incident, as unfortunate as it was, will lead to something even more important. Marcus nodded, turning off the news coverage on his phone. Maybe, but first, we need to make sure this never happens again. Not to me, not to any other officer, not to any civilian. The clock showed 8:30 p.m., and while Central Station had returned to normal operations, the ripple effects of today's events were just beginning. Tomorrow would bring congressional inquiries, policy reviews, and difficult conversations across every law enforcement agency in America. One more thing, Thompson added, handing Marcus a folder. The director wants you to lead the new interagency training program. Time to turn this incident into real change. Marcus took the folder, knowing that his most important work was just beginning. 2 months after the Central Station incident, Marcus Johnson stood in front of a packed auditorium at the FBI Training Academy in Quantico. His audience included police chiefs, SWAT commanders, and federal agents from across the country. Communication isn't just about sending emails or making phone calls, Marcus began, clicking to a slide showing the viral photos of his arrest. It's about breaking down walls between agencies, challenging our assumptions, and most importantly, recognizing our biases before they lead to mistakes like this. In the front row, Commander Roberts sat quietly. He had become an unexpected ally in Marcus's mission for change, using his own mistake as a teaching point in police training sessions. When I was handcuffed that day, Marcus continued, I wasn't just an FBI agent being mistaken for a threat. I was every black man who's been judged by appearance rather than actions. But today, we're here to change that narrative. The new interagency training program, dubbed Operation Clear Sight, had become Marcus's primary mission. The FBI director had given him full authority to reshape communication protocols between law enforcement agencies. During a break, Sarah Thompson approached Marcus with fresh news. "Remember those suspects who escaped during the incident? Denver PD just picked them up. Your initial suspicions were right. They were planning something big." Marcus nodded, feeling a mix of relief and vindication. "Any chance we can use that case in the training? Show how proper surveillance could have prevented both their escape and my arrest." "Already working on it," Thompson replied, handing him a file. "The director wants it included in next week's congressional testimony." The changes weren't limited to training programs. Police departments nationwide had implemented new verification protocols. Every major station now had a direct hotline to federal agencies. The misrouted email that had contributed to Marcus's arrest would never happen again. In the station's break room, Marcus checked his phone. His mother had sent him a link to a news article titled "FBI Agent's Wrongful Arrest Leads to Nationwide Police Reforms." Below it was a simple message: "Proud of you, son." Back in the auditorium, Marcus introduced the next speaker, a software engineer who had developed a new real-time communication app for law enforcement agencies. The app, inspired by Marcus's incident, allowed instant verification of undercover operatives across all agencies. "This isn't just about preventing mistakes," Marcus explained as the engineer demonstrated the app. "It's about building trust between agencies, between officers, and most importantly, with our communities." Commander Roberts joined Marcus on stage to share his perspective. "2 months ago, I made a decision based on fear and assumptions. Today, I'm here to tell you how we're making sure that never happens again." The audience listened intently as Roberts detailed the new protocols his department had implemented. Every SWAT deployment now required triple verification. Racial bias training had been intensified. Community engagement programs had been expanded. During lunch, Marcus received an unexpected visitor, his younger brother, now wearing a detective's badge. "Your story changed things at my precinct, bro," he said. "Last week, we had a situation similar to yours. But because of these new protocols, we handled it differently. No mistakes, no viral videos, just good police work." Marcus smiled, remembering the fear in his mother's voice when she'd first seen the videos of his arrest. Now, those same videos were being used to train officers across the country. Later that afternoon, Marcus led a practical exercise. Officers from different agencies had to work together to handle a simulated crisis, testing the new protocols and communication systems in real time. "Remember," Marcus called out as the teams assembled, "every person you encounter is someone's son, daughter, brother, or sister. Take the extra minute to verify. Make the extra call to confirm. Those minutes could prevent years of damaged trust." As the day wound down, Thompson shared more good news. The Congressional Committee had approved additional funding for the training program. Marcus's incident had become a catalyst for genuine change. "You've turned a negative into a positive," Thompson said, watching the officers practice with the new communication systems. "That's not easy to do." Marcus watched as a young black officer successfully completed the training scenario, properly identifying an undercover agent without escalation. "No," he replied, "it's not easy, but it's necessary." The clock showed 5:00 p.m., and while the training day was ending, the impact of these changes was just beginning. In police stations across America, new protocols were being implemented, new conversations were being had, and new understanding was being built. Change, Marcus had learned, didn't always come the way you expected. Sometimes it came through challenging moments that forced everyone to see things differently. 1 year after the Central Station incident, Marcus Johnson sat in his new office at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The wall behind his desk displayed framed newspaper headlines chronicling the journey from that fateful day to now. His new title read, Assistant Director of Interagency Relations and Training. The morning sun streamed through his window as he reviewed the latest statistics. Incidents of mistaken identity in law enforcement had dropped by 60% nationwide. The real-time verification app, now standard issue for all federal and local law enforcement, had prevented countless potential mistakes. His phone buzzed with a text from Commander Roberts. "Turn on the news." Marcus switched on his office TV to see a familiar scene playing out in Chicago, but with a different ending. A black undercover officer had been spotted by local SWAT, but the new protocols had prevented another Central Station incident. "This is how it should work," Marcus muttered to himself, a small smile playing on his lips. Sarah Thompson knocked on his door, entering with a thick folder. "The one-year report is ready for the director," she said. "Want to hear the highlights?" Marcus nodded, leaning back in his chair. Over 10,000 officers trained in the new protocols. 23 potential incidents prevented by the verification system. 15 lives potentially saved by improved interagency communication. And the best part, 7 other countries have adopted our training program. His mother's framed quote hung on the wall. "Make it mean something." Below it sat a photo of Marcus with his brother at his brother's recent promotion to captain, the youngest black police captain in his department's history. "We've got a situation in Boston," Thompson continued. "An undercover operation almost went wrong, but they used your protocols. The officer sent me this." She handed him her phone, showing a message that read, "Tell Agent Johnson his training saved my life today." Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a new class of FBI trainees was going through their morning exercises. Among them were faces of every color, each one required to complete the enhanced cultural awareness and interagency communication training he had developed. "Remember those suspects from Central Station?" Thompson asked. "Their trial starts next week. Their lawyer tried claiming entrapment, but your original surveillance notes held up in court. Even your arrest ended up strengthening the case, showed just how dedicated our agents are." A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Marcus's assistant. "Sir, the Attorney General is here for the briefing." Before heading to the meeting, Marcus checked his calendar. Tomorrow, he would be speaking at Central Station, the same place where everything had changed a year ago. But this time, he would be standing alongside Commander Roberts, introducing the station's new Joint Operations Center, where federal and local law enforcement would work together under the new protocols. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a young black FBI trainee. "Your story inspired me to join the Bureau. Thank you for making it easier for those who follow." In the hallway, Marcus passed a wall of screens showing real-time communication between agencies across the country. The system that grew from his incident now connected thousands of law enforcement officers, preventing misunderstandings and saving lives. "Ready for tomorrow?" Thompson asked as they walked to the Attorney General's office. "More than ready," Marcus replied. "But our work isn't done." That evening, as Marcus packed up his briefcase, he found an old photo of himself from that day at Central Station, hands raised, surrounded by SWAT team members. Next to it was a recent photo of him training those same SWAT officers in the new protocols. His final meeting of the day was with a committee planning next year's law enforcement reforms. As he entered the conference room, he saw faces from every agency: FBI, local police, SWAT, and community leaders, all working together. "Let's begin," Marcus said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "We've made progress, but there's more to do. Every officer should be able to do their job without fear. Every citizen should be treated with respect, and every mistake should be a lesson that makes us better." The clock showed 6:00 p.m., and as the sun set over Washington, Marcus Johnson looked around the table at the diverse group of law enforcement leaders. What had started as a frightening moment of mistaken identity had transformed into a movement for positive change. His mother's words echoed in his mind once more. Make it mean something. And he had. 1 year later, that meaning continued to grow, changing lives and transforming law enforcement, one training session, one protocol, one mind at a time. The work wasn't finished, but the path forward was clear. And Marcus Johnson would keep walking it, leading the way for others to follow.